Live from London, the Spontaneity Shop presents The Guilty Feminist with me, Deborah Frances-White, and my very special guest, Dr Mine Conkbayir, talking about neurodiversity and the policies in the UK currently excluding neurodiverse children. My guest today is a lecturer, award-winning author and trainer. She has worked in the field of early childhood education and care for over 17 years. She is the winner of the Nursery Management Today, NMT, Top 5 Most Inspirational People in Childcare Award. And in the 2025 News Honours, she got an MBE. She is doing incredible work in ADHD and neuroatypicality, specifically in guidelines for British children in education who are neuroatypical. And that is what we are mostly focused on today because we need to know about it and make a change. Please welcome to the podcast, Dr Mine Conkbayir. Welcome to the podcast, Mine.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm very excited to have you. Now, we often play a game at the top called I'm a Feminist But, where we confess something. Do you have anything? If you don't, you can think about it.
I've got a lot.
What have you got?
I love men with hairy chests.
Oh, well, that's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing unfeminist about that.
But the really Tom Jones cheesy hirsute man.
Yeah, and a hirsute man. A man that's more hair than man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the brute aftershave type of
Right.
man.
You like a really old school hairy man, maybe a bit unreconstructed.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, that's an I'm a
really
feminist but.
not okay, not PC.
You're just drawn libidinously.
I am
to a man that you need to train.
Yeah, unashamedly so. Like the opposite of Paul Whitehouse, my husband. You know,
you are in every way an opposites attract couple.
Yes.
Although you're both very, very lovely.
Yeah,
I was lucky enough to do your podcast recently, which isn't out yet, listeners, but will be soon. What's your podcast called?
I'm ADHD. No, you're not.
I'm ADHD, no, you're not, because Paul's a bit suspicious of the whole thing.
Yeah, I've grown to really appreciate his role in the podcast now, to challenge, to question, to pull apart, deconstruct, reconstruct collaboratively with our guests. It's important, his voice. I didn't really count it as so at the beginning, but now I value it.
I think so. I think also listeners who are like, not sure about that, you need that side of it
exactly
to deconstruct it, and also you do want to test things and put them to the metal.
Yeah, and I think the amount of emails we get in, a lot of it is due to his part where he does question it. And actually, thanks to his questioning, we now have a lot of men writing in saying, thanks for covering the mental health aspect. I didn't realise, but this and this trait, I think I'm going to go and get checked. Yes, it turns out that their ADHD is diagnosed at 65, 70, 72 years old. So the debates we have and conjure up are really important. And I'm,
and Paul's bringing in an audience as well of lots of men and other people, but men especially probably from that time.
Yeah.
Because some of our listeners will know Paul from The Fast Show, which was an iconic sketch show in the 90s and noughties.
Yeah.
And some will know him from many other things, but including Bridget Christie's The Change, which is a show about menopause, written, starring, directed by the incredible Bridget Christie, who's been on this podcast many times. And he plays a chap in the pub who always wants to have a drink with her, but has always got a controversial opinion. And she Socratically wins him over by asking him lots of questions. And it's just a brilliant turn. I always look forward to it in The Change. I always look forward to Paul popping up. So, he's a lovely man, really, really lovely man.
He is genuinely a really lovely human being, great at playing devil's advocate, great at getting the debates going, but always in a safe space. Like Robbie Williams asked us, you guys, you do this all the time, you're fighting non-stop, but how do you know when to stop? I said, well, there's a level of respect and trust there. And I always tell Paul, just be as hardcore as you can with me. Don't hold back with the jokes, because I find it funny, and he does catch me out about myself a lot. Likewise, I do with him. So we know, there's no holds barred, but it's always respectfully done. It's just a tease. It's always lovingly done.
Enjoyable. Well, we are feminists, but we've spent most of the podcast so far talking about a man. Let's grind those gears forward into you, because you are a doctor, Mine, because you have a PhD, and can you explain a little bit about what your PhD is in and how this relates to ADHD?
Yeah, so I've been lecturing actually for over 25 years, working with babies. It started at nursery for me, being a nursery practitioner, as they were called, nursery nurses. And I think studying to become a teacher at the time, my lecturers saw something in me that they thought, yes, ka-ching, she'd be a great lecturer. So I started practicing lecturing while I was still a student and working as a nursery nurse. I realised, oh my God, I love this. And I was teaching my peers at the time. So I was just about 20 and just fell in love with it, wanted more and more. So did the teaching degrees. But realising, oh my goodness, there's a huge gaping gap here. We didn't study the developing brain at all. I remember clearly one black and white A4 sheet on the theories of Jean Piaget, a child development theorist, thinking, no, this is wrong. We are so behind here. It was like the year 2000 at the time. And I started to build in knowledge around the developing brain, the neuroscience backing it as a student, teacher, lecturer at the time. And that's what I based my PhD on, the current lack of neuroscience teaching in teacher training, and especially for nursery staff, because we just look after children and babies. No, that's not what we do. We are really brain builders here, and we need to know more about the brain and our role in developing it healthily.
And so
I looked at the gap of neuroscience in our work, and is there a gap? Where does it reside? What do we need to cover? Yes, like I said, there's a massive paucity of neuroscience training in our teachers, for our teachers and our early years staff. And it remains today because there's a skewed emphasis on behaviour management and forcing our children to comply mindlessly, as opposed to nurturing their brains and their minds, understanding that brain is built bottom up, backwards to front, and we need to nurture that emotional brain before we can tap into the upstairs thinking rational brain, if you like, all those executive functioning skills, which us ADHDers struggle with.
We certainly do. Both of us have ADHD. You should hear our voice notes to each other and our missed communications of, did we not say Tuesday? Did we not say Tuesday?
Yeah.
And it's because we've both got that really lateral brain, and the way you talk sometimes, where you'll roll on thoughts.
Yeah.
I know I do that a lot. And it's a wonderful thing because it means you think fast, you think differently from other people. It's great for comedy. It's great for academics thinking, hold on, no one's thought of that before. Should I go over here? I'm connecting something with something else that's never been connected before. But it can be sometimes logistically challenging, or challenging to talk to somebody who's neurotypical, who's sometimes people say to me, your brain works so fast, I can't keep up with you. You have to slow down.
Yeah.
You have to let me digest one thing you've said. And I really struggle with it because I'm like, but when I talk to you, we don't have that problem. We can keep up with each other really easily.
Absolutely.
So as somebody who's a specialist in childhood brains, what are the things that a lot of people listen to this podcast, have children or love children, have them in their lives or teach children. What things could you tell them about how the brain develops that might help them in the way that they're caring for or supporting those children?
I think being a lot more understanding and patient with our infants and our children. I mean, I've seen parents reprimand their 15-month-old babies in parks and say that they're going to have time out when they go home. You know, the teachings, I use that term as loosely as possible, of Joe Frost's Super Nanny make me sick to my core.
Oh, really?
It's so... Oh, God, let me not swear, Deborah. You can cut all this rambling out. It's just
fine.
so anti-child. It's so adult-centric and not mindful of that child's inner world and their psychological well-being. It's not about reprimands. It's about co-regulating our infants, our children's, our young people's behaviours, their emotions, their responses to what's going on around them, as opposed to enforcing your agenda onto them. And I think that's what a lot of teachers and families miss, because society trains us to focus on how we want that child or young adult to perform, regardless of how they're feeling at the time. So I say time out to all behaviour management, to all consequences. There's this obsession with consequences. Let it go. Focus on building that safe relationship with your child to let them know that they are unconditionally loved It is not dependent on whether you do this, you don't do that, you do it my way or the highway. And yeah, just helping them to understand and process how they're feeling and why, where it's coming from. And if they behave in ways that aren't so pro-social or safe psychologically or physically, well, what are the alternatives? Let's find solutions together. That's the bit that has to replace the consequences, right? It's joint solution seeking. So next time you're feeling, oh, okay, I'm getting a bit wobbly emotionally, I'm feeling dysregulated. How does that feel in my body? Spend time with your children, teaching them this, what it might feel like, look like, and give them self-regulation strategies, as opposed to, I don't like what you did there, go to your room, you can't have this.
Sit on the naughty step.
All of that, which is enforced in schools, as we know, to the point of isolation booths, which have just been given that okay by the higher courts. I mean, it beggars belief. It really does. So I just think...
You can't develop empathy for others in an isolation booth.
No, exactly that.
So if you've been antisocial, that's the worst thing you can do.
Of course.
And then you say to that person, that child, you don't deserve empathy. We're going to teach you how to have less empathy for somebody else because you were being antisocial.
And so many brain scans have shown that the pain felt by a child or young person of being isolated is akin to physical pain, physical punishment, but there's no room for this in the education system. And I just it is careering rapidly backwards, and we need to be more confident in challenging this as parents, primary carers, foster carers, because these teachers are not being trained the right way, the child-centred way. It's just about behaviour management, academic outcomes. But ironically, it's so counterintuitive, because with that obsession of academic outcomes, you're ignoring a child's emotional world, and those children are suffering.
So could you give me an example of what you could do if a child is being antisocial? You don't want to give them these consequences that make them scared, or really, really they're just about you, or they're just about making that child be quiet. What can you do?
As in the context of a parent or a teacher?
Either.
I mean, for me, it's always been very straightforward. I was always given the tough groups at college, for example, because the teachers gave up on them. They wouldn't turn up, these lecturers. And I remember my first ever group, I was 22, I think, at the time. No, I weren't. I was 20. And they were rolling in 40 minutes late, an hour late, 10 minutes before the lecture would end. And I was like, come on, I just pushed the tables aside, got them in a circle, sat them down and spoke to them with no authority, no fear of, well, if you say that, you're going to get in trouble and you have to go see the principal, whatever. It was just, what's going on? Tell me how you're feeling. And obviously they were really unhappy. They knew they were disliked. They weren't trusted. And I always start with a point of trust. I don't say you have to earn trust. That's not how I operate as a parent or as a teacher. I never have done. And if there's an issue, you say, like, if someone's being antisocial, I've been attacked, I've been spat at, I've been punched, but it comes from a place of deep fear, right? You think how that child or that young adult must be feeling in that moment to attack someone. It's come from something. They've been triggered. So I always just get to the root of the triggers. And I'll say, because I'll never forget that moment, actually, when I was attacked. And I just stood there and took it and I went, look, clearly you're not all right. Do you want to chat about it? Should we go for a walk? I'll get someone into the room. Let's just cool off. Do you want a hug? Young girls, tears streaming. Just hold me. Just hold me. That's all I want. Aww. What am I going to do? Like, kick you out, exclude you because you're clearly dysregulated? No, I squidged her hard. We had a chat. I got someone else in the room and we went for a walk out of the grounds. We sat under a tree. Some of your listeners might be listening to this, what a loon. I don't care. It's always worked. My way has always worked because they know that I give a toss about them and they know that they can come to me no matter what. And that's how I operate as a parent as well. There are no consequences. You're saying antisocial. What's the root of it? What's that root cause? How can I help you get through it? What do you need? And why would that fail? It doesn't fail.
So this is really, really interesting stuff, and it's very powerful stuff. And I'm sure almost all of our listeners are going, well, this sounds intuitively right.
Can I cut in? I'm so sorry. I just feel I need to say a lot of adults, particularly teachers, and I do understand that they're very scared of relinquishing control. It has to be this hierarchy. There has to be this power divide. They have to know that I am in control, I am in charge. And I think that's where the punishments come in. I can't be seen to be out of control. I'm the boss here. No, let that crap go. If your real goal is to help this person to be a well-rounded, resilient person who can achieve in life, then you really must always meet them where they are at, not forcing them to be in your space. It never works that way. So I just think it's, flipping that mindset and allowing yourself to go with their flow.
And I also do want to say, I know there's a lot of hardworking teachers that work under very, very difficult circumstances, probably at times have felt incredibly unsafe. Female teachers working with young men, all of that. So I do, whatever you're doing, I know you're trying hard, and I know that you often probably feel like it's frustrating or it's so difficult or it's impossible, or the rules around, not being able to hug children or whatever it is.
But sometimes I completely agree, and please don't take this as a criticism. No teacher should ever feel that, but just, Deborah, you're right. I'm not going to challenge that. Demands are intense on teachers. They're stressed to the max. There's no support for their mental health. Pay remains shoddy. I understand all of that. And I understand the need to follow rules. You've got rent to pay, mortgage to pay off. I completely respect all of that. But sometimes it's just daring to do a bit differently than what we've always been told to do. The rule book didn't exist for me. I had to rip it up. Otherwise, I would be failing every single student that walked through the doors, and I just wasn't prepared to do that. Times have changed a lot in terms of accountability and safeguarding. That was what I was going to say. We were told in some nurseries not to hug babies and pick them up. Well, sod that for a laugh. There's a no hug policy. So what would you do? You give them a cushion. Well, no, you can F off then. Now, I'm not giving a distressed infant a cushion when they are in desperate need of human contact. And you think some of those babies from 6 months are in a nursery setting from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. No, thanks. No, that's not happening. Didn't happen with my young adults either, or primary school age children. I know times have changed, like I said, but some were being abused by foster carers, by their dads, their mothers, beaten, sexually abused. They didn't have a safe space to study. I'd stay as long as I could at that college with them. I'd take them home, I'd feed them. They'd study at my house. Who would do that? You wouldn't do that, but I chose to do it, and that's what got them through. It's...
Yeah, it is very much my instinct as well, and I know so many times the rules and the logistics work against that. But I think we all feel intuitively that is the way forward. Can I ask you now, because of your interest in speciality and neurodivergence, you were telling me some really interesting things about, and kind of terrifying things about, how the government have been labelling neurodivergent children. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so I happened upon an article in The Guardian a few months ago now, and it was just a small list of headlines, and I latched onto it. I was like, what? When you had to read something 2, 3, 4, 5 times over to properly assimilate, I was like, no, that's not right. And basically it's how Ofsted is training its inspectors to view autistic children specifically as quote unquote likely extremists, quote unquote, due to developing special interests and having communication and social difficulties, quote unquote. I was just incredulous. So I tapped into all the people I could, all the organisations I could, National Autistic Society, the head of Neurodiversity in Business, Dan Harris, who's been an amazing ally. So many individuals, various professors, independent journalists. And I contacted Ofsted and they said, yes, it's staying in place because they are known to be, A, B and C. You are clearly absolutely clueless and you are dangerous with it. You have to change this. It's baseless. Mm-hmm. And the evidence they cited wasn't evidence, hard data at all. It was the opinions of some experts talking about children with autism. Well, no, it doesn't come in a carrier bag that you hold. You're autistic, right? So all the terminology was lazy, ignorant, and I've just been fighting ever since to get these sections, if you like, in the Ofsted training amended at least, because I'm trying to help them understand, look, if you are othering a group in society, a very vulnerable group as it is, you're creating the very conditions for them to kick against society. Mm-hmm. We know that autistic individuals, young people disproportionately are represented under Prevent, generally erroneously so as well. So we've had a lot of support from well-known faces. So Chris Packham's videos have gone viral about it. Carrie Grant, we've got Johnny Vegas on board. There's so much kickback against this. It's just, it's insane that you deem it appropriate to label autistic children as extremists because they socialise differently. Mm-hmm. You're even calling them difficulties. No, it's just different. Mm-hmm. So I think resources would be better spent properly educating our teachers about neurodivergence, about what these special interests look like, because from an early years perspective, I would be very concerned if a child did not develop special interests. They're what we call schemas. They are how children learn about the world. We need them, right? We need to get interested and focused in and explore in order to learn, because that's how children best learn. But training teachers and Ofsted inspectors to view autistic children as a threat, there's something seriously wrong there. So initially, I got so many people, parents, teachers, professors alike, to write into Ofsted, and everyone got the same copy and pasted reply. Thank you for concern. It's for children's best interest. It's a safeguarding issue. Yeah, you're creating the safeguarding issue. Stop this. Just amend the content to say, to acknowledge that any child, due to a whole host of factors, could be at risk of extremism, could be trauma. It could be abuse in the home, at school.
Could be neglect.
Bullying, neglect. Absolutely.
Extremists come along and they pay you loads of attention.
Absolutely.
If you've been neglected or if you're bullied at school, someone comes along and says, we'll be your friends.
That's right. All of that. But to blame it on being autistic, I mean, you think of, we've got great role models in the autistic community. Greta Thunberg, hello.
And her special interest is saving the planet.
Exactly. The heightened justice sensitivity goes out of the window. You're training these inspectors to view autistic children as a threat to society. That's warped and it needs to be stopped. So I've got some great MPs on board who have submitted parliamentary questions. Lord Bradley as well has been pivotal in all of this. But again, we're getting the same pushback. But I did speak with someone fairly recently, having been on the Jeremy Vines show, and this person was a great help. He got us straight into the interim chief at Ofsted, a direct line to him, where this person read the content and said, you know what, hands up. This does not look good. It is not robust. It can be deemed as discriminatory.
Oh, good.
We need a review to take place.
Yes, Mine.
And I said, my goodness, thank you so much. At last, somebody is speaking sense. But what concerned me, so you asked where it's at, this is where it's at. That was on the 5th of August, this correspondence. I have all the proof. But just 2 days later, Sir Martin Oliver, chief of Ofsted, we can fix his name in a minute, sent the same reply out to me and other MPs to the parliamentary question saying, thank you for your concern. The content will remain because it's part of a bigger strategy to stop terrorism. So I'm not stopping there. Yet
No.
again, I'm organising an evening event at the House of Lords. Again, thanks to Lord Bradley, who's sponsoring it, just to have this debate out there and make them understand why what they're doing is discriminatory under the Equality Act 2010. It clearly states that any teacher implicitly or explicitly discriminating a child is unlawful. Well, hello, how can you defend it under the flimsy guise of safeguarding? You are creating the safeguarding concern here. It's a breach.
Well, also, if you're telling teachers to be on the lookout for autistic children being radicalised, you're not looking at the other children. All children could be radicalised.
Exactly.
So you're targeting in on a child that's just knows all the football scores and is really
lining up the trains or whatever it might be.
It's got one best
you know.
mate and really just likes hanging out with them and doesn't socialise in a neurotypical way and finds it hard to talk to neurotypical people as opposed to, not necessarily finds it hard to talk to them, but finds it hard to read social cues from neurotypical people, won't have that same problem with neuroatypical people probably. So you're looking at that and you're going, well, you focusing in on this kid and you are not seeing this kid over here.
That's right.
Who is in some way or another vulnerable, is absolutely neurotypical, but is vulnerable because of the community they're in, the messages they're hearing, there's something going on at home. You're not looking at them.
Also, let's not forget, post-COVID, child development's taken an absolute battering.
Oh, God,
okay,
yes.
And, of course, tech devices, children are becoming more introverted. They are lacking the social skills. They do feel uncomfortable with the eye contact and making friends. They're not quite sure how to. I mean, that's 'twas ever thus, I suppose. But COVID shone a massive light on that and heightened all of these issues in our children. So what about those then? What about those issues? But it's just autistic children. What on earth? I've worked with so many young adults who were situationally mute. It wasn't about me branding them. Oh my God, they're a terrorist. What do? I found ways to communicate with them and make them feel safe in my classrooms. But you're telling inspectors to view that child or young adult as a threat. It's also very clever, but it's not, because we've rumbled you, Ofsted. It's getting away with supporting that child for their send, whatever the need is, right? I refer them to prevent. Well, what about the support for the send? Well, you don't invest financially in that. You just whip them off to prevent, which, of course, as well, disproportionately, under which, of course, Muslim individuals are disproportionately represented, and now autistic children and young adults. It's just unacceptable. We're not asking for much here. Just amend the content slightly so that it reads, all children are potentially at risk of radicalisation based on a whole host of factors. Okay, if you must put neurodivergence as one. But again, that's a failing of society. It's not because of the neurodivergence itself. It's oh my
because
goodness.
Then they're likely to feel isolated.
Of course.
But it's the isolation that's the problem, not the neurodivergence. So if that comes into it, that needs to be contextualised in that way.
Absolutely. It's just like sending a neurodivergent child off into an isolation booth because they're fidgeting and they don't give you eye contact because it disturbs them, or they don't feel like they fit into your classroom, so they kick off. Well, that's not about a failure in the child, it's a failure of the education system. It is no coincidence that over 450,000 children no longer access school-based education because they are put in a state of utter distress and dis-ease. Doesn't have to be this way.
So what is it that you would like the listeners to do to address the situation?
If they feel moved enough, I would urge them to write into Ofsted and ask them about this content and getting it amended.
Can they also write to their MP?
They can write to their MP, absolutely, please do. I've been ignored by Emily Thornberry, as always. But on
give
we
it
go.
a go.
Give it a go, definitely, please do, and don't stop. And if you're interested in attending my parliamentary event that hopefully takes place on the 20th of October, get in touch with me somewhere on social media.
So how would you like people to get in touch with you? if they would like to come to that event at the House of Lords?
I am Dr Mine Conkbayir on Instagram. I am Dr Mine Conkbayir on LinkedIn. I'm on X, same name.
Great. So you spell that MINE and then CONKBAYIR. If you'd like to write to Ofsted, inquiries@ofsted.gov.uk, or you can phone up on 0300 123 4666. And if you're a listener who's outside the UK, you might want to check what the policy is in your country, if it's a similar thing. If it's not, be on guard for it, and be aware that neurodivergent children are often put into a box of we don't understand you and therefore you might be scary, rather than saying, oh, hold on, there's a whole heap of stuff they've got to navigate here that a non-neurodivergent person, or in this case non-autistic person, doesn't have to even think about. And they've got a whole extra job going on. And imagine being 4 years old or 7-year-old or 12 years old and having this whole extra job of trying to understand this language that's not natural to you, and this world and these rules that make no sense to you. And with that, then also further being demonized, effectively, having lots of things projected upon you that you might do this or you might do that, like Minority Report, that you're going to somehow in the future commit a crime because we don't quite get how you operate. So I think we all want to help Minna with that. So we'll write to Ofsted this afternoon. And anyone listening to this, if you wanted to just pop an email to Ofsted right now, I'm going to...
I'll gladly give you the template which you can use to write in.
Oh, great. Where could we get that, Minna?
I can email it to you and you can send it out should anyone... if anyone gets in touch with me, I'll just send it to them directly, which I've been doing for hundreds of people, to be honest with you, because people are rightly incensed by this.
Great.
I was shocked. I couldn't believe it, and we need it to change. We cannot allow them to go on with this due to ignorance.
Absolutely. And we could put the wording in the show notes for the podcast as well. If you send us the template wording,
brilliant,
we'll pop it in the show notes.
Thank
or
you.
A link to it in the show notes. But again, that email address is inquiries@ofsted.gov.uk, and we'll also put that into the show notes. What else is there that you can tell us about neurodivergence and ways that, as you know, if we have ADHD or if we are autistic, is there anything else you can tell us? Because I feel like you're such an expert on this, and there's lots and lots of, I know there's lots of listeners with ADHD. We have many listeners who are autistic, who would love to hear some of your insights. And actually, some of those insights might be best for the neurotypical people who live and work with those who have ADHD and autistic.
I'll start by saying what my daughter said to me just last week. Would you stop being so ADHD? And it was because I caused a security breach at the airport because I was so... I'm very organised, Deborah, believe it or not, but I can be so fast, I can look like a lunatic, unstable, if that's not PC, sorry, cut out whatever you want. And I was darting around in the airport and I kept, we have to scan your boarding pass. And I did it so many times in such a short amount of time, I flipped the system and it was like I had already boarded the plane. Oh. So it took about 45, 50 minutes for me to get another one printed. And I was really panicked, and my daughter rightly is frustrated because I'm a mum, behave yourself and act like a mum, right? But I don't ever do that. And this lovely attendant said to me, don't panic, just take your time, just breathe. And that, for me, my whole body language was like, like deflated and calm. And it made my executive functioning skills be able to come back online, because a lot of the time ADHD as children and adults are like are living in a state of fight or flight. We know that we are different. I often feel like I say to my husband, and I know I haven't, but it's the equivalent of, I got 10 heads because I feel like, everyone's staring at me. I feel strange. I know I act markedly differently to other adults. But when you ask me, what can neurotypical people do? show understanding and believe a person when they say, I'm ADHD, I find this and this different. Encourage that ADHD to advocate for themselves. Or what do you need? How can I help you? Not stop being an effing nuisance. Why can't you just effing do the thing? Hey, there's a great idea. Well, yeah, if I could, I would, but I struggle. So I think it's just, being patient, creating the conditions that will enable that ADHD, a child or adult, to thrive, and not expecting them to work from what makes you feel comfortable. It's going back to what I said at the beginning of the conversation. Meet them where they're at. If they don't like the bright lights, if something's triggering them, if they need a fidget toy, whatever, to help them focus. It's not 1, 2, 3 eyes on me. No, I find it better if my eyes are darting around the place. It's less intimidating. I can think straight. So it's, just understanding what that individual needs. Because if you've met one ADHD, you've met one ADHD. What I need is going to be different to what you need. What trips me up is going to be different to what trips you up. But it's taking the time to find that out. And I will very openly in email correspondence, if I don't know somebody at the outset, say, I'm an ADHDer. Please be very clear with me in terms of what you need and by when. Expect me to use emojis. Expect me to reply or email you at 3 a.m. on a Sunday because I can't sleep. It doesn't mean I expect, likewise responses, random times. No, but it's how I operate best. And it's important for us both if you know that, so that you know what to expect from me.
That's very, very helpful. And it's for people with ADHD to be clear about expectations that others should have, and then for others to be patient and understand it's just a different kind of brain, and to do what they can to accommodate that.
Yeah, I don't think that's a lot to ask. As a teacher, I'd always get my supervisor saying, why are you always rocking? I didn't know I was ADHD then. I attributed every quirk and foible to the childhood trauma. So I'd be rocking, I'd be standing, half stood up on a chair, writing a lesson plan that was vertical in loads of neon colours with post-it tabs flying off at all directions, whereas there was a strict template. Minna didn't do strict templates. I had to do it my way or it wouldn't get done. And I was always very meticulous, Deborah, to the, 30 seconds, let alone to the minute of a plan, but it was my way and it worked. And I didn't ever get told off for it. It was just curiosity. But even then, no one had thought to say, could you perhaps be ADHD? It just wasn't a thing. Even then, it wasn't that long ago.
No, it's something that we have a much greater awareness of now. But I went to a doctor who said, it's not really a disorder, it's a different sort of brain. And I think that we have become, I read a lot about it actually, that in the Industrial Revolution, that's when we started to want everyone to have the same sort of brain. Even before that, in the Agricultural Revolution, when we were more nomadic, we needed some people who were likely to stay up late at night to see if there was any danger coming.
Absolutely.
We needed people who were able to charge off and say, follow me, instinctively. And we also needed people who were going to sleep at night and be very strategic and very careful and not so impulsive. And we needed all of those people for the community to survive and thrive. Once we went into agriculture, which is you get up at dawn and you plant and you reap and you do all of the things you do, and then into especially the Industrial Revolution, where you're wanting people to turn up at the right time to a factory, stay in lines, do as you're told, work all day, finish when you're told, go home, come back the next day. That's when some people started to be seen as not fitting in.
That's
because
right.
you don't fit into that template.
Yeah.
You would find that very, very, very difficult. And then they go, well, you're a bit broken. It's like, no, I'm not good at this, but I'm really good at that.
That's right.
And I've got a different sort of brain. And so we've encouraged everybody to form even line, which is what we do with children.
Yeah.
Of course, if you're nomadic and you're wandering around hunting and gathering, you don't want all your children to sit in rows looking ahead, thinking thoughts in regulated 45-minute packages. You want the kid that's going to be good at aim, and you want the kid that's going to be good at tracking, and you want the kid that is going to be running around, seeing everything, looking everywhere. And, yes, you're training them towards further skills, but you can allow them to have their ways of being and their special talents.
There's no room for any of that, and we're still operating under that industrial perspective, if you like, in terms of the education system. It was just recently I was watching a piece on the news and I laughed. I was sad, but I laughed, and it was about the crisis of creativity in the workplace. I thought, are you all so removed and clueless that you can't track it back to the education system where creativity has been squeezed out of everything in terms of the curriculum offer? There's no, PE to a minimum. Where's the cookery gone? Where are the arts? Where's drama? Where's music? It's all about, English and maths. No room for anything creative, anything joyful coming from that child. It's almost deemed as dangerous and we can't go there. It's got to be rigid, and that's the outlet sausage factory, isn't it? It really is.
How are you going to make money out of this?
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
And I know.
And ironically, the arts is the biggest moneymaker in this country.
Absolutely.
It's all we really make now, and it's we've got this. Imagine the country of Shakespeare and the Beatles not investing in art in school.
Exactly.
But even when we did do a lot of art in school, and I'm sure some people still do art in school, but I know it's been wildly cut. But even when we did it, I went to a state school in Australia. I've met a lot of people who can't draw, but none of them were 6, because all 6-year-olds, you put paper out and coloured pencils, they will just draw things. Yeah. But we got to a certain age where we all thought we were good at drawing, and we wanted our drawings on the fridge, and we got to a certain age where you had to learn it like GCSE art.
Yeah.
And then you were told by the teacher that wasn't right. This child is better than this child. And you kind of give up your love of it. You withdraw from it a bit because you go, oh, I'm not very good at that. Yeah. And so once, even a very creative subject can be taught uncreatively. And that's not to say you don't want children learning about perspective but it's the environment in which you're taught drama or art or where everything is labelled as, on a grade system, and you've got people who don't really encourage innovation.
Yeah, and it's all about outcome over process and enjoyment, and I think that's what destroys it for a lot of children.
Absolutely.
And adults.
What mark are you going to, what grade are you going to get that's going to help you get into the right university? And then what are you going to do when you're there? And I remember hearing David Cameron years ago when he was in power saying, well, what we need is more films like James Bond and Harry Potter that are successful. And it's like, mate, no one's trying to make an unsuccessful film. The way you make successful things is letting artists have goes at making what they really want to make. Yeah. Some of those will become big financial hits, but you don't find them by telling artists that want to do something new, copy that. Because then that's not going to be successful because it's just going to be a copy of that. You need to create the environment where an artist can flourish, and a percentage of those projects will rise to the top of, financially, but lots of other projects may not be the most financially viable, but will speak to somebody.
Absolutely.
And may speak to a huge underground community who, maybe that artist is putting a lot of stuff out online and encouraging other young people to flourish in their work. Everything has to have a number on it all the time, and it doesn't always work that way.
I agree.
But if you do want your country to have if you're worried about the bottom line, if that's your big thing, and you're worried about everything making money and all, the best way to have some big hits, which then can support some of the lesser financially successful things, is let people do their thing.
Yeah.
Foster it all.
There's none of that.
Foster it all, and there will be so much stuff that will financially rise to the top.
Real investment, and there's none of that either.
It's, oh my God, the way things are being kind of back. Did you hear, like, the National Theatre's being just massively stripped back in its staff for touring productions? And I'm like, that makes no sense with a National Theatre. Yeah. Like, this is insane. Like, we need to, I mean, I don't know, it just feels very sad under a Labour government that we're not seeing injection of money into those things, because it does just change how society operates at every single level.
Do you think it's conscious in terms of wanting to stifle that creativity and that non-compliance, if you like?
It's always hard to say, isn't it, how any individual government, how much they're just being short-termist and going, turn that tap off, we need to save money for this. But it does, I think, over generations, certainly there are governments. I mean, you've heard Donald Trump say, "I love the uneducated." You know, I think, yeah, I mean, do you want, as a government, I mean, I would if I was running a government, but I can see why many governments would not want an really educated, thoughtful population who can argue back, who can see the flaws, who can do the
That's
maths,
what I mean. Yeah, exactly.
who can write a great play and write a commentary on. That's what they should be aspiring to.
Yeah.
They should be aspiring to that.
Instead, they fear it.
I think they
and
fear
want
it.
to stifle it.
I think they
find
fear
that
it.
very disturbing.
It's so sad because it's exactly what human beings should be doing.
Yeah.
Is sitting in that space of why are we here and what's it all
That's
for and how
right.
can we find this greater connection?
Yeah, there's no room for it. It's all mindless compliance. And even from, my daughter's younger childhood, she's 13 now, I've always tried to instill that criticality in her, that importance of critical thinking, the need to assert herself, to question everything and everyone, particularly me. And I'm glad she's doing that.
I bet she is doing now. She's 13.
Yeah,
She's probably gone into overdrive. Be careful what you wish for there.
I know, but I love it at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Paul's
yeah.
like, you did that. I'm like, actually good, I'm glad.
Yeah, absolutely. You especially, I think especially with girls, because society doesn't encourage it.
Exactly this.
It encourages compliance and demureness.
Yeah, and roles are made very clear from the outset. Hell no. It's like, as a child, I'd be playing football, got scouted by Arsenal girls, trained with the ladies, all this, da-da-da-da. And obviously Delilah picked that up. And I mean, it shocked me to my core when my mum spoke out against it. Oh, you shouldn't be doing this. It's not what girls do. I'm like, are you having a laugh? And, she's been picked for teams outside of school, in school. I'm like, there's nothing you can't do. Just because you're a girl, I'm not having that. And it's really, there were loads of conversations where it's changed her mind for the better, thankfully. And she'll go for what she wants to go for.
Yeah, absolutely. And women's football in this country is so much better than men's football now.
Yeah.
I mean, we are flying
Smashing
those flags. Absolutely. Mina, is there anything you came to say that you didn't get to say today?
Yes. You didn't answer my question. What did I ask you? Hang on, to cut that bit out and make it tidy. Could James Bond ever be played by a woman?
Oh, it's a great question. Now, this was a question that you asked me on a voice note.
Yeah.
I thought I did send back a voice note about this. I think you missed it. So what I said was, but no doubt because we've got ADHD, I didn't send it and you did miss it.
I missed it, I'm sure.
You missed the message I didn't send. No, maybe it didn't go through. So I would rather, in the spirit of innovation and creativity, I'd rather create a new character.
Yeah.
To me, James Bond is so masculine and quite clearly toxically masculine. I don't use toxic masculinity very much as a phrase because I don't want it to become a shorthand for masculine.
Yeah,
like
I
that boys
of course.
go, oh, am I toxic just for being a boy? I don't want that.
Yeah.
However, I think if there ever was a toxically masculine character, it's somebody who can sleep with a woman and then wake up to find her boiled in oil or covered in gold or something and go, oh, well, and not shed a tear or be affected by it. And I think, kill someone and do a little quip and walk away. And so I feel like he is so hardened and unhappy. And the best James Bond moments are always when he's crying in the shower and someone he's loved has died and he's affected by it. But to me, it's such a masculine character. I would rather... I loved, like when Phoebe Waller-Bridge and the team and the creatives behind the novel created Killing Eve. Yeah. Because that's then asking the question, what if a woman's in that position? Rather than trying to impose womanhood onto a most masculine role. I don't see why we need a female James Bond. I think we need more roles for women. I think Doctor Who is very different because Doctor Who is a Time Lord who has two hearts. I want to see all sorts of manifestations of Doctor Who. The whole point of Doctor Who is that he, she, they are always regenerated in a different form. And so very interesting. I want to see a kid Doctor Who. I want to see it. We've had old men Doctor Who's. We've had all sorts of Doctor Who. So I'm very interested in seeing that character. But I think that character's nature is to be fluid and regenerative. James Bond's nature is to be fixed. There is a screenwriting guide called it's Robert McKee's Story. And I think he says the reason that James Bond is a more enduring character than Rambo is because Rambo looks like a killing machine and is a killing machine, whereas James Bond looks like a playboy and is a killing machine. And that's what makes him more interesting, is this duality that he's very well dressed and he knows how he likes his martini.
Smiling assassin.
Very charming, can chat up women in a bar
Yeah.
and, all of that sort of stuff, but then can kill you quick as look at you. So he is an enduring character for a reason.
Outmoded though, right? I don't imagine he's as much loved as he was back in the day.
I mean, do you know what I'd like to see? This is my pitch, is because they will keep making James Bond movies. I'd like to see Jacob Elordi play him in the 50s because he started in the 60s. I want to see the origin story.
Yeah.
I want to see how he became James Bond. Where were his vulnerability points? I think he got expelled from Eton for sleeping with a dame, which is like their matrons there.
Yeah.
He slept with or a young maid there, somebody who was working in service there. And I believe that's what happened to Ian Fleming. He was at Eton and got, and I think that could speak to a lot of our leaders now are Etonians. A lot of always disproportionate number of the cabinet, especially under Tory governments, are Etonians. So I'm interested in how is that person cooked and baked, and what kind of person was he, and how did he become the person he is? Because people like that have always, in some way or another, been brutalised.
Agreed.
And how do they? How do they build up both that resilience and that inability to listen to their own soft spots, much less anybody else's? So I think if they are going to make James Bond, so if anybody's listening, I think the Broccolis have given it up now and given it over to Amazon. So God knows we'll have spin-offs in every single direction. I would like to see Jacob Elordi explore him as a young man if we're going to have more. I mean, it's not necessarily there are some great Bonds, but there's not. It's not obviously my first port of call being a feminist to go and watch Bond.
No.
But I'll go and see it with my husband, who's a massive, massive movie buff and understands the canon in a way that I don't. And I think, I'm not interested in seeing Bond as a woman personally, but I'm always up for seeing, okay, I'll tell you what, if Amazon are going to make spin-offs, Judi Dench's M, who's the young M, how has she formed?
Yeah.
What's that about? The life of some of these women who are just brought in to just have names that are innuendos and have no other life outside, shagging James Bond and then maybe being a bad somebody operating for a quote unquote bad entity. I mean, they're all bad entities. That's kind of the are these people human, or are they just people called pussy galore? Like they're not really people. They're just like tits and attitude. And what's the dimension there? I think is more interesting from my point of view.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you.
Any thoughts from you
on James Bond?
Yeah, or were you just interested in me because of feminism?
No, who was it who said, it was Helen Mirren, right? She's a hardcore feminist, but she would not want to see James Bond played by a woman. You can't have Jane Bond, for example. And I get it. It's just such an outmoded concept for me now. And I thought, actually, it doesn't sit well with me. Like, I can go on about I love a cheesy masculine man, but actually watching the James Bond films makes me feel uncomfortable these days. I was just curious to know your position on it.
Sleeping with him would make your blood run cold, wouldn't it? Oh, awful.
I can't. I mean, as a child on a Saturday afternoon, they'd always be on.
Yeah.
I remember the Duran Duran soundtrack, for example, of one. Dolph Lundgren, loved him, even though he was, arch enemy. But it doesn't bode well for me now.
Well, it's a great guilty feminist question, and thank you so much for asking it. Mine, how can we follow your work? To tell us where we can hear your podcast, anything else we can read or follow you on socials?
Do please follow me on my socials. Like I said, Dr Mine Conkbayir on Instagram and on LinkedIn and on X. Please do tune into our podcast with Paul Whitehouse and myself. It's I'm ADHD, No You're Not, and it's on Spotify.
And it'll be wherever you get your podcasts.
Exactly that sentence. And it's the website is I'mADHDKnowYou'reNot.com, and I've built a massive repository of information on there for ADHDers and their families, professionals, which is always well received. And a lot of listeners love to add to, they write in and, we co-construct that. So yeah, do please tune in. And if you're going to come to any of our live sellout shows, which kick off in a week, then I look forward to seeing you there. Come up and say hi after.
Wonderful. I did the podcast and very, very much enjoyed it. My episode will be out soon. But of course, before I did it, I listened to other people's and I found it very enlightening. So get involved in I'm ADHD. No, you're not. Mina, thank you so much for coming today on The Guilty Feminist. You've been an absolutely wonderful guest.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You have been listening to The Guilty Feminist with me, Deborah Frances-White, and my very special guest, Dr Mine Conkbayir. Music was by Mark Hodge. The producer was Tom Selinsky for The Spontaneity Shop. Thanks to Gina Dicio, Zainab Ahmed, and Ned Sedgwick, as well as all of you for listening. For more information about this and other episodes, visit guiltyfeminist.com.